Three 6-year-old triplet sisters are stranded on a deserted Arizona highway, with their mother unconscious after a car accident. A billionaire CEO in the midst of an existential crisis happens to drive by at exactly that moment and stops to help them. What no one knows is that an impossible secret from the past connects their lives in ways they never imagined. Before we begin this incredible journey, please subscribe, comment justice below, and tell us where you're watching from. The Arizona sun burned mercilessly at 2 in the afternoon, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirror of heat. Highway 89, a stretch of road so desolate that even the cacti seemed lonely, cut through the copper-colored landscape like a scar. Miles and miles of nothing but red earth, scattered rocks, and the occasional tumbleweed dancing across the pavement. It was the kind of road where drivers went an hour without seeing another soul, where cell phone signals died, and where hope itself seemed to evaporate in the relentless heat. On this particular Thursday in late June, 3 small figures appeared on that lonely highway like apparitions in the desert haze. Triplets, identical in every way, with golden blonde hair that caught the sunlight like spun silk, and eyes the color of summer sky. They wore bright hoodies in pink, yellow, and purple, now dusty and torn. Their small faces were streaked with tears and dirt, and on each of their right palms, drawn in red lipstick they'd found in their mother's purse, was a large X. The girls stood in a line across the road holding hands, their free arms raised high, waving desperately at the empty horizon. Their voices, hoarse from crying and screaming, called out in unison every few minutes. "Please help us. Please stop. We need help." Behind them, about 50 yards down a steep embankment, a silver sedan lay on its side, smoke still rising from under the crumpled hood. The driver's side door hung open, revealing the unconscious form of a woman slumped over the steering wheel, her dark hair cascading over her face. "Mommy won't wake up," sobbed the girl in the pink hoodie. Her name was Lily. She was the oldest by 3 minutes and had always been the protector. "We have to keep trying. Someone has to come." "I'm scared, Lily," whimpered the middle sister in yellow, Chloe. Her lips trembled, and fresh tears carved clean paths down her dusty cheeks. "What if nobody comes? What if we're here forever?" "We won't be," said the youngest, Rosie, in the purple hoodie. Despite being the smallest, she possessed a strange certainty that even she couldn't explain. "Someone will come. I can feel it. We just have to be brave a little longer." The accident had happened 3 hours ago. Their mother, Sarah Mitchell, had been driving them from their tiny apartment in Flagstaff to Phoenix for what she said was an important interview. She'd been awake for nearly 36 hours, working double shifts at the diner and then packing everything they owned into garbage bags in the back seat. The girls didn't understand why they had to leave so suddenly, but they trusted their mommy. They always did. Sarah had tried so hard to stay awake. She'd rolled down the windows, turned up the radio, even asked the girls to sing songs with her. But somewhere on that endless stretch of Highway 89, exhaustion had claimed her. Her eyes had closed for just a moment, just 1 second, but that was enough. The car had drifted off the road, hit loose gravel, and rolled down the embankment. The girls remembered the terrifying sensation of tumbling, of glass breaking, of screaming. When the car finally stopped moving, they'd found themselves miraculously unharmed except for minor cuts and bruises. But their mother wouldn't respond. She was breathing but unconscious, and no matter how much they shook her or cried her name, she wouldn't open her eyes. Lily, thinking clearly despite her fear, had remembered what their teacher, Mrs. Peterson, said about emergencies. "If you're ever in trouble and need help, make yourself visible. Wave your arms. Make noise. Do whatever you can to get attention." So the girls had climbed out of the broken car window, scrambled up the embankment, and positioned themselves on the road. The X on their palms had been Rosie's idea. She'd seen it in a movie once, where people marked themselves to show they needed rescue. It had made sense to her 6-year-old mind, and her sisters had agreed. They'd used the only red thing they could find, their mother's lipstick from her purse, carefully drawing identical X marks on each other's hands. For 3 hours they'd stood on that road. For 3 hours, not a single vehicle had passed. The sun had climbed higher, the heat had grown more intense, and their hope had begun to waver. They had no water, no food, no way to contact anyone. The accident had happened in one of the few remaining dead zones in Arizona, where even the strongest cell signal couldn't penetrate the vast emptiness. "I see something," Chloe suddenly shouted, pointing toward the northern horizon. A dark speck had appeared where the road met the sky. "Look, it's coming this way." All three girls jumped up and down, waving their arms frantically, their X-marked hands held high. Their voices rose together in a desperate chorus. "Help us, please help us. Stop, please stop." The speck grew larger, taking the shape of a luxury vehicle, a black Range Rover that moved with surprising speed along the empty highway. The girls screamed louder, jumping higher, their small bodies forming a barrier across the road that no driver could possibly miss. Inside the Range Rover, Marcus Thorne was having the worst day of his 42 years on Earth. The billionaire CEO of Thorne Industries, a tech empire worth $12 billion, had just walked out of the biggest board meeting of his career. He'd quit his own company, thrown his resignation in the faces of the very people who'd tried to force him out. 20 years of building something from nothing, and it had all collapsed in a single morning. Marcus had started driving with no destination in mind. He just wanted to get away, to escape the suffocating towers of Phoenix and the betrayal that still burned in his chest. He'd taken turns at random, following roads he'd never traveled, until he'd found himself on Highway 89, heading north into the vast emptiness of the Arizona desert. His mind was a storm of anger, regret, and something darker he didn't want to name. He was driving too fast, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. The road blurred past him, and he barely registered the landscape. He was thinking about his life, about the choices that had led him here, about the emptiness that no amount of money could fill. That's when he saw them. 3 small figures in the middle of the road, jumping and waving. At first, his mind couldn't process what he was seeing. Were they real? Were they a mirage created by the heat and his fractured mental state? But as he got closer, the reality became undeniable. 3 little girls, identical in appearance, standing directly in his path, their hands marked with something red. Marcus slammed on the brakes. The Range Rover's tires screamed against the asphalt, leaving long black marks as the vehicle skidded to a stop less than 20 feet from where the girls stood. His heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline flooding his system. He'd been driving at nearly 80 miles per hour. If he'd been looking at his phone, if he'd reacted a second later, if he'd been any less skilled at driving, he would have hit them. For a moment, Marcus just sat there, his hands still gripping the wheel, trying to process what had just happened. Then he saw the girls running toward his car, their faces desperate and tear-stained, their mouths forming words he couldn't hear through the closed windows. He threw open the door and stepped out, his 6'3" frame unfolding from the vehicle. The heat hit him like a physical force, and so did the sound of 3 little voices all talking at once. "Please help us. Our mommy won't wake up. We've been here so long. Please, mister, you have to help." Marcus looked down at the 3 identical faces staring up at him, and his breath caught in his throat. Triplets. 6 years old, maybe 7. Blonde hair tangled and dusty. Eyes wide with fear and hope in equal measure. And those X marks on their palms, drawn in what he now recognized as lipstick. His professional mind, trained to assess situations quickly, immediately understood the severity. These children had been here for hours. They were showing signs of dehydration, and they were saying their mother was hurt. "Where is your mother?" he asked, his voice rough from not having spoken in hours. All 3 girls pointed toward the embankment. "Down there, in the car. She crashed and she won't wake up." Marcus moved quickly to the edge of the road and looked down, his stomach tightened. The silver sedan lay on its side, clearly damaged from rolling. He could see a figure inside, unmoving. This wasn't just a breakdown. This was a serious accident, and these children had been out here alone for God knows how long. "Okay, listen to me," Marcus said, dropping to one knee so he was at eye level with the girls. His voice, usually commanding and cold in boardrooms, became gentle. "My name is Marcus. You 3 did exactly the right thing by staying visible and asking for help. You're very brave. I'm going to help your mother. But first I need you to get in my car where it's cool, okay? There's water in the back seat. Drink slowly, just a little at a time." The girl in pink, Lily, studied him with an intensity that surprised him. Despite her tear-streaked face and obvious fear, there was something remarkably composed about her. "You promise you'll help our mommy? You promise you won't leave us?" "I promise," Marcus said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Something about these three little souls had cut through the darkness that had been consuming him all morning. "I'm not going anywhere until your mother is safe." The girls climbed into the Range Rover, and Marcus could hear them finding the bottles of expensive mineral water he always kept stocked. He grabbed his phone, cursing when he saw the no-service message. Of course, this godforsaken stretch of road was a dead zone. He'd have to handle this himself until he could drive close enough to civilization to call for help. Marcus carefully made his way down the embankment, his expensive Italian shoes slipping on the loose rocks. When he reached the sedan, he approached the driver's side carefully, calling out so as not to startle the woman if she was conscious. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm here to help." No response. He peered through the open door and got his first clear look at the driver. A woman, probably in her early 30s with long dark hair and delicate features. She was breathing, which was the most important thing, but she was definitely unconscious. There was a small cut on her forehead that had bled, but seemed to have stopped. No visible major injuries, but he knew better than to move someone who'd been in an accident without knowing the extent of their injuries. Marcus reached in carefully and felt for her pulse, strong and steady. Good. He gently moved her hair away from her face to check her pupils, a basic first aid technique he'd learned years ago. As he did, something caught his eye. On the woman's left wrist, partially hidden by the sleeve of her diner uniform, was a tattoo, a military insignia, Army Medical Corps, and below it, a date. Marcus froze, his mind racing. He looked more closely at her face, and a memory surfaced from 7 years ago. A memory he'd buried deep. Afghanistan. A dusty field hospital, the worst day of his life. He'd been there as a civilian consultant helping to install new medical technology for the military. There'd been an attack. A mortar shell had hit close to the hospital. People had been screaming, running, dying. Marcus had taken shrapnel to his leg and was bleeding out, certain he was going to die on that foreign soil far from home. And then a female medic had appeared, working on him with fierce determination, telling him to stay awake, to keep fighting. She'd saved his life that day, performing field surgery that had bought him enough time to get to proper medical care. He'd never learned her name. Everything had been chaos, and by the time he'd recovered enough to ask about her, the hospital personnel had rotated out. He'd spent months trying to find her, wanting to thank her, but the military bureaucracy had been impenetrable. Eventually, he'd given up, accepting that he'd never know who had pulled him back from death's door. Now, staring at the unconscious woman in the wrecked car, Marcus felt a strange certainty growing in his chest. The tattoo. The familiar features he'd seen through the haze of pain and shock 7 years ago. The age was right. Everything was right. This woman lying unconscious in this car, this mother of 3 brave little girls, might be the very person who'd saved his life when he'd needed it most. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he pulled back from the wrecked car. His mind was reeling, caught between the immediate crisis and the impossible coincidence unfolding before him. He needed to focus. Whether or not this woman was his long-lost savior from Afghanistan, she needed medical attention now, and her daughters needed him to be strong. He climbed back up the embankment, his leg aching from the old shrapnel wound. The girls were sitting in the back seat of his Range Rover, sipping water slowly, just as he'd instructed. 6 little eyes watched him approach with desperate hope. When he reached the vehicle, all 3 girls spoke at once. "Is Mommy okay? Is she awake? Can we see her?" Marcus crouched down beside the open door, meeting their gazes with as much calm as he could muster. "Your mother is breathing, and her heartbeat is strong, which is very good news. But she hit her head in the accident, so she's sleeping deeply. We need to get help to her quickly. I'm going to drive until I can call an ambulance, okay? But I need you to tell me something first. What's your mother's name?" "Sarah Mitchell." Lily answered immediately. And we're Lily, Chloe, and Rosie. We're 6 years old. We live in Flagstaff, and Mommy works at Mel's Diner. She works really hard. She's the best mommy in the whole world. Sarah Mitchell. The name meant nothing to Marcus, but that didn't surprise him. In the chaos of that day in Afghanistan, names had been the least important thing. What mattered now was getting her help. I'm sure she is, Marcus said gently. Now, I need you girls to stay right here and keep drinking water while I drive to where my phone works. Can you do that? We want to see Mommy, Rosie protested, her lower lip trembling. Marcus understood. These children had been through trauma, and they needed their mother. But he also knew that moving Sarah without proper medical equipment could be dangerous, and keeping the girls calm was crucial. An idea struck him. Here's what we're going to do, he said. I'm going to go down and stay with your mother while I send someone to get help. But first, I need one of you to come with me and bring her something. Something that will let her know you're all safe and that help is coming. Who wants to do that? Lily's hand shot up immediately. Me. I'm the oldest. I'll do it. Marcus nodded and offered his hand. Lily took it, her small fingers disappearing in his large palm. Together they made their way carefully down the embankment. When they reached the car, Lily's composure finally cracked. Mommy, she cried out, trying to climb into the car. Marcus caught her gently. Wait, sweetheart. We can't move her yet. But you can hold her hand and talk to her. Sometimes people who are sleeping deeply can still hear us. Lily carefully reached through the car door and took her mother's hand. Mommy, it's Lily. Me and Chloe and Rosie are okay. We're safe. A nice man stopped to help us. His name is Marcus. You're going to be okay too. You have to be okay. We need you, Mommy. Please wake up. Marcus watched the little girl's tears fall on her mother's hand, and something inside his chest tightened. He'd built an empire, accumulated wealth that most people couldn't even imagine, but he'd never experienced anything as pure as the love he was witnessing right now. This child's desperate plea for her mother cut through all his cynicism, all his pain from this morning's betrayal, and reminded him what truly mattered in life. Lily, he said softly, I need you to do something for me. I'm going to stay right here with your mother while you go back up to the car. Inside the center console there's a satellite phone. It's black and bigger than a regular phone. Can you bring it to me? It works even when regular phones don't. Lily nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of red lipstick across her cheek. I can do that. I'm good at following directions. I know you are, Marcus said. You and your sisters are remarkably brave. As Lily scrambled back up the embankment, Marcus turned his attention to Sarah. He carefully checked her vital signs again. Pulse still strong, breathing regular. The head wound had stopped bleeding completely. These were all good signs, but she remained unconscious, which concerned him. Concussion was the likely diagnosis, but without proper medical equipment, he couldn't be certain there wasn't something more serious. Lily returned quickly, carefully carrying the satellite phone with both hands like it was made of glass. Here, Mr. Marcus. I didn't drop it. You did perfectly, Marcus said, taking the phone. He quickly dialed 911, relief flooding through him when the call connected. He explained the situation to the dispatcher, giving their exact location based on the GPS coordinates from his vehicle. The dispatcher informed him that due to their remote location, it would take approximately 45 minutes for emergency services to arrive. They would be sending a medical helicopter from Phoenix. 45 minutes, Marcus repeated after ending the call. He looked at Lily. Help is coming and they're sending a helicopter. Have you ever seen a helicopter up close? Lily shook her head, her eyes widening slightly despite her worry. Well, you're going to get to see one today. And they're going to bring people who are experts at helping people like your mother. But while we wait, I'm going to stay right here with her. And I want you to go back up to your sisters and tell them everything is going to be okay. Can you do that? Yes, sir, Lily said. She hesitated, then added, Thank you for stopping. Thank you for helping us. I prayed that someone would come, and you came. Marcus felt something crack inside his hardened heart. This morning he'd been ready to give up on everything. He'd quit his company, the thing he'd spent his entire adult life building, and driven into the desert with dark thoughts circling in his mind. He'd been thinking about how meaningless it all was, how empty success felt when everyone around you only saw dollar signs. He'd been dwelling on betrayal, on loneliness, on the pointlessness of accumulating wealth when you had no one to share it with. And then the universe, or God, or fate, or whatever forces moved through the world, had literally put 3 small children directly in his path. 3 lives that desperately needed saving. And possibly the woman who had once saved his own life, now needing him to return the favor. "You're welcome, Lily," he said quietly. "Now go take care of your sisters. I'll take care of your mom." For the next 45 minutes, Marcus sat beside the wrecked car, monitoring Sarah's condition and talking to her. The doctors always said that unconscious patients might be able to hear, and he figured it couldn't hurt. He told her about her daughters, about how brave they'd been, how they'd marked their hands with X's and stood in the middle of the road waving for help. He told her that they were safe now drinking water in his air-conditioned car. He told her that help was coming. And in the quiet spaces between his reassurances to Sarah, Marcus found himself telling her things he'd never said out loud to anyone. About the emptiness he felt despite all his success. About the board meeting this morning, where people he'd trusted had tried to force him into decisions that went against everything he believed in. About how he'd walked away from his own company because he couldn't compromise his principles, even if it cost him everything. About how he'd been driving through the desert questioning whether any of it had been worth it. "And then I saw your daughters," he said softly. 3 little angels standing in the middle of the road, marked with X's like they were marking the spot where my life was supposed to change direction. I almost hit them. Another second and I would have been going too fast to stop. But I didn't. And now I'm here. And I'm realizing that maybe the universe was telling me something. Maybe I was supposed to find you today. Maybe you were supposed to need help today. Because 9 years ago I think you saved my life in Afghanistan, and today I get to save yours. A sound from above made him look up. Lily was standing at the edge of the embankment, watching him with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. "Mr. Marcus?" she called down. "Chloe and Rosie and me, we want to sing Mommy her favorite song. Is that okay?" Marcus's throat tightened. "That's a wonderful idea." The 3 little voices rose together, floating down from the road above in imperfect but heartfelt harmony. They sang, "You Are My Sunshine," and their young voices cracked with emotion on every verse. Marcus watched Sarah's face as her daughters sang, and for just a moment he thought he saw her eyelids flutter. But then she was still again, and he couldn't be sure if he'd imagined it. The sound of helicopter rotors finally cut through the desert air, growing louder as the medical helicopter approached. Marcus stood and waved, guiding them to a flat area about 100 yards down the road. Within minutes, the air was filled with dust and noise as the helicopter landed. A medical team emerged, moving with practiced efficiency. Marcus climbed back up the embankment to keep the girls calm while the paramedics worked. They were frightened by the noise and commotion, pressing against him as they watched the medical team carefully extract their mother from the wrecked car and secure her to a stretcher. "Is Mommy going to die?" Chloe whispered, her face pressed against Marcus's side. "No, sweetheart," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "These people are experts. They're going to take very good care of her." One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, climbed up to where Marcus stood with the girls. "Are these her daughters?" "Yes, triplets. Lily, Chloe, and Rosie. They've been incredibly brave." The paramedic smiled at the girls. "Your mom is lucky to have such brave daughters. We're going to take her to Phoenix Children's Hospital. It has the best trauma center in the state. You girls are going to ride in this gentleman's car and meet us there, okay?" "Can't we go with Mommy?" Rosie asked, tears streaming down her face. "There's only room for patients in the helicopter, honey," the paramedic explained gently. "But I promise we'll take excellent care of her, and you'll see her very soon." Marcus felt all 3 girls grip his hands tighter, their small fingers digging into his palms. Without thinking, he said, "I'll make sure they get there safely. You have my word." As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Sarah into the sky, Marcus stood with 3 little girls watching until it disappeared into the distance. Then he felt Lily tug on his sleeve. Mr. Marcus? We don't have anywhere to go. Mommy said we were leaving our apartment because we couldn't pay for it anymore. Everything we own is in the back of that broken car. What's going to happen to us? Marcus looked down at 3 pairs of eyes staring up at him, and in that moment, he made a decision that would change all their lives forever. You're coming with me, he said simply. And we're going to make sure your mother gets the best medical care in the world. And then we're going to figure everything else out. Together. The drive from Highway 89 to Phoenix Children's Hospital should have taken 2 hours, but Marcus made it in 90 minutes, pushing the Range Rover as fast as he dared while keeping 3 precious passengers safe. The girls sat in the back seat, unusually quiet now that the immediate crisis had passed. Shock was setting in, Marcus realized. They'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and now the reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. Are you girls hungry? Marcus asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. There's a town coming up. We could stop and get some food. Mommy says we shouldn't take food from strangers, Chloe said quietly, but her stomach growled loudly enough to contradict her words. That's usually very good advice, Marcus agreed. But I'm not a stranger anymore, am I? I'm Marcus, the person who's helping your family. And your mom would want you to eat something. When did you last have a meal? The girls looked at each other and Lily answered. Mommy made us breakfast before we left, cereal. But that was really early, before the sun came up. Marcus did the math. That meant these children hadn't eaten in over 12 hours. Okay, we're definitely stopping. I know a place in Prescott that makes the best pancakes in Arizona. How does that sound? For the first time since he found out, he saw genuine smiles appear on their faces. Pancakes? Rosie said, her eyes lighting up. With syrup? With as much syrup as you want, Marcus promised. 20 minutes later, they pulled into a small family diner on the outskirts of Prescott. Marcus had been there once before, years ago, and remembered it fondly. The kind of place with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone honey. As they walked in, he was acutely aware of how they must look. 3 disheveled little girls in torn, dusty hoodies with X marks on their hands, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit that had seen better days after scrambling down rocky embankments. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a name tag that read Martha, took one look at them and immediately understood that something was wrong. But instead of asking questions, she simply smiled and said, Well, aren't you 3 the prettiest little things? Come on, let's get you settled in my best booth. Once they were seated, Martha brought coloring pages and crayons without being asked. Now, while you darlings look at the menu, how about I bring some milk and some of our fresh-baked rolls? On the house. As the girls focused on their coloring, Martha leaned close to Marcus. Those children look like they've been through something. You all right? Need me to call anyone? Marcus appreciated her discretion. There was an accident. Their mother is being airlifted to Phoenix. I'm taking them to meet her. They haven't eaten since early this morning. Martha nodded knowingly. Say no more. I'll make sure they get a good meal. And take your time. No rush here. When the food arrived, enormous plates of pancakes with whipped cream and strawberries, all 3 girls stared in disbelief. Is this all for us? Lily whispered. All for you, Marcus confirmed. Eat as much as you want. He watched them eat with the focused intensity of children who'd been truly hungry. It reminded him painfully of his own childhood, before his intelligence and determination had pulled him out of poverty. He'd known that hollow feeling in his stomach, the constant awareness of not having enough. He'd sworn to himself back then that if he ever had the means, he'd never let a child go hungry if he could help it. As the girls ate, Marcus pulled out his phone and made a series of calls. First to his personal assistant, Laura, instructing her to meet him at the hospital with a full change of clothes for 3 6-year-old girls. Then to his lawyer, briefly explaining the situation and asking about the legal procedures for a child welfare situation like this. Finally, he called the hospital directly, using his considerable influence to ensure that Sarah Mitchell would receive the absolute best care available and that he'd be updated on her condition immediately upon arrival. Mr. Marcus? Rosie's small voice interrupted his final call. Can I ask you something? He ended the call and gave her his full attention. Of course, sweetheart, what is it? Why are you being so nice to us? Mommy always says that rich people don't care about people like us. But you stopped your car. You helped us. You're buying us food. Why? Marcus felt that question hit him squarely in the chest. Out of the mouths of babes, as the saying went. Why was he helping them? He could have called 911 and left. He could have waited with them until help arrived and then gone on his way. Instead, he'd promised to take them to the hospital, to make sure their mother received the best care to see this through to the end. Your mother isn't entirely wrong, Marcus said carefully, wanting to be honest with them. A lot of rich people do forget what it's like to struggle. They forget that money isn't the most important thing in life. But here's what I believe. Every single person we meet is important. Every life matters. And today I happen to be in the right place at the right time to help you. How could I not? But there's more, isn't there? Lily said, studying him with those two intelligent eyes. You looked at Mommy funny, down by the car, like you recognized her. This child was far too perceptive. Marcus chose his words carefully. A long time ago, before you were born, I was hurt very badly. A brave soldier who was also a doctor saved my life. I never got to thank her properly. When I saw your mother today, I noticed she has a military tattoo. I think maybe she might be that person, but I don't know for sure yet. All three girls' eyes went wide. Mommy was in the army, Chloe said. She never talks about it. She gets sad when we ask. Sometimes people who serve in the military see very difficult things, Marcus explained. Things that are hard to talk about. But that doesn't make what they did any less brave or important. The conversation was interrupted by Martha returning to refill their drinks. As she poured, she looked at the X marks still visible on the girls' palms. What's the story with those marks, sweethearts? We drew them so people would see us and stop to help, Rosie explained proudly. It worked. Mr. Marcus saw us. Martha met Marcus's eyes over the children's heads, and he saw her expression shift as she understood just how dire the situation had been. Well, she said, her voice a bit thick with emotion, you girls are very, very smart, and Mr. Marcus was very lucky to find such clever children. After the meal, as Marcus paid the bill, Martha slipped a paper bag across the counter. Some cookies for the road, and honey? She addressed the girls directly. You take care of your mama when you see her, and you remember that there are good people in the world. People like this gentleman here. Don't let anyone tell you different. Back in the car, as they continued toward Phoenix, the girls finally began to talk more freely. They told Marcus about their life in Flagstaff, about their tiny apartment that leaked when it rained, about how their mother worked 2 jobs but they still never had enough money. They told him about school, about their teacher, Mrs. Peterson, who was nice but sometimes looked at them with sad eyes. They told him about how sometimes they went to bed hungry, but their mother always made sure they had at least one good meal a day, even if it meant she didn't eat. Mommy says things are going to get better, Lily said. She says she's got a plan. That's why we were driving to Phoenix. She had an interview for a job that paid more money. She was so tired, but she said we couldn't miss this chance. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sarah Mitchell had been driving exhausted, probably operating on no sleep, desperately trying to get to a job interview that might improve her daughter's lives. And she'd crashed. If he hadn't happened to take that exact road at that exact time, if those girls hadn't been brave enough and smart enough to mark themselves and stand in the road, they might have been out there for days. In this heat, without water, that would have been fatal. Your mother loves you very much, Marcus said quietly. Everything she's done has been for you 3. We know, Rosie said simply. That's why we have to take care of her now. It's our turn. The Phoenix Children's Hospital emergency entrance appeared ahead, its modern glass and steel structure gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Marcus pulled up to the entrance and immediately a valet appeared, along with his assistant Laura, exactly as he'd instructed. Laura, efficient as always, had brought not only clothes for the girls, but also some basic toiletries and even a few stuffed animals. Mr. Thorne, Laura greeted him, then immediately turned her attention to the girls with a warm smile. And you must be Lily, Chloe, and Rosie. I've heard you three are incredibly brave. I brought some things I thought you might like. While Laura helped the girls change out of their dirty clothes in a private family room, Marcus went directly to the trauma desk. Sarah Mitchell, he told the receptionist. She was airlifted in about an hour ago. I need to know her condition. The receptionist typed rapidly. Are you family? I'm the person who found her and her daughters after the accident. I'm also the person who's guaranteeing payment for her treatment. I want to speak with her attending physician immediately. Something in his tone made the receptionist move faster. Within 5 minutes, Marcus was in a consultation room with Dr. Patricia Chen, the head of trauma. Dr. Chen was a small woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and intelligent eyes that had seen everything. Ms. Mitchell has a grade 2 concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and some impressive bruising, Dr. Chen reported. But she's extraordinarily lucky. No internal bleeding, no spinal damage, no skull fracture. She's conscious now and asking about her daughters. Relief flooded through Marcus so intensely he had to sit down. She's going to be okay? Barring complications, yes. She'll need to stay for observation for at least 48 hours and she'll be sore for a few weeks, but she should make a full recovery. Dr. Chen paused, studying him. Mr. Thorne, I have to ask, what's your connection to this family? The receptionist mentioned you're covering the costs. Ms. Mitchell doesn't have insurance. I'm someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time, Marcus said. And I'm someone who might owe her a debt from a long time ago. Can I see her? And can her daughters see her? Of course, room 312. But Mr. Thorne? Dr. Chen caught his arm as he turned to leave. Whatever your reasons, you should know that you saved 4 lives today. Those girls had been in that heat for hours. Another hour or two, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Marcus found the girls with Laura in the waiting room. They looked transformed in clean clothes, their faces washed, their hair brushed. But their eyes still held that worried, haunted look. Is Mommy okay? They asked in unison before he could even speak. Your mother is awake and asking for you, Marcus said, and watched joy transform their faces. Come on, let's go see her. The walk to room 312 felt both too long and too short. Marcus wasn't sure what he would find, what he would say. But when he opened the door and saw Sarah Mitchell sitting up in bed, her eyes immediately found her daughters and filled with tears. The girls ran to her, carefully climbing onto the bed and nestling against her sides. Babies, Sarah whispered, kissing each of their heads. My brave, smart babies. They told me what you did. The X marks standing in the road. You saved us. You saved all of us. We were so scared, Mommy. Chloe sobbed. You wouldn't wake up. I know, baby, I know. But I'm okay now. We're all okay. Sarah looked up then and saw Marcus standing in the doorway. Their eyes met, and he saw confusion flicker across her face. You're the man who stopped? The nurse said someone named Marcus Thorne found the girls. That you brought them here. Marcus stepped into the room. His heart was pounding. Yes. I was driving on Highway 89 when I saw your daughters. They were very brave, very smart. He paused, then decided to take the chance. Ms. Mitchell, I need to ask you something. Were you in Afghanistan? About 9 years ago with the Army Medical Corps? Sarah's face went pale. Her hand instinctively went to her wrist, to the tattoo he'd seen. How did you... Why are you asking me that? Because 9 years ago, I was in Afghanistan as a civilian contractor. And one day there was an attack, a mortar shell. I was hit with shrapnel and bleeding out. A female Army medic performed field surgery on me. She saved my life. I never got her name. Everything was chaos, and by the time I recovered, she'd rotated out. But she had a tattoo like yours, and I never forgot her face. Sarah's eyes widened with recognition. The tech consultant. The one who kept trying to crack jokes while I was digging metal out of his leg. You kept saying you had to stay alive because you had important work to do. Marcus felt his knees go weak. It was her. After all these years, after all his searching, here she was. You told me to shut up and let you work. You said you didn't care how important my work was. You weren't going to let me die on your watch, and you didn't. You saved my life. And you just saved mine. Sarah whispered. And my daughter's lives. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the impossibility of the situation settling over them like snow. Then Lily, perceptive as always, broke the silence. So Mr. Marcus isn't just a nice stranger. He's a friend. He's family. And somehow in that moment, Marcus knew the little girl was absolutely right. Something had changed today. Finding these 4 people, saving them, being saved by one of them years ago, it all meant something. The universe or God or fate had brought them together for a reason. His empty morning, his crisis of faith in everything he'd built, it had all led him to that road at that exact moment. Yes, Marcus heard himself saying, I think we are family now. The hospital room fell into a comfortable silence after Marcus's declaration. The triplets, sensing that something important and good had just happened, snuggled closer to their mother. Sarah stroked their hair gently, wincing slightly from the pain in her ribs but refusing to let go of her daughters. Marcus stood awkwardly near the door, suddenly unsure of his place in this intimate family moment. Mr. Thorne, Sarah said softly, and he noticed she'd switched to his formal name now that the immediate crisis had passed. I don't know how to thank you. You didn't just stop. You stayed. You took care of my girls. You brought them here safely. You're even paying for my medical care, which I have no way to repay. Please call me Marcus, he said, moving closer to the bed. And you don't owe me anything. You saved my life 9 years ago. I'd say we're even now. That was my job, Sarah protested. I was a combat medic. Saving lives was what I did. And I'm a person with resources who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Helping your family is what I'm choosing to do. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed. Sarah, your daughters told me about your situation during the drive here, about your apartment in Flagstaff, about the job interview you were trying to get to. I want to help, if you'll let me. Sarah's expression hardened slightly, and Marcus recognized the pride of someone who'd fought hard for everything they had. I don't need charity, Mr. Thorne. We've been poor, yes, but we manage. I take care of my girls. Mommy, Lily interjected quietly. Mr. Marcus isn't being mean. He's being nice. There's a difference. Sarah looked at her daughter, surprised by the wisdom in those words. Marcus took the opportunity to continue. What Lily said is exactly right. This isn't charity, Sarah. This is one human being helping another. You have 3 remarkable daughters who need stability and opportunities. You nearly killed yourself today trying to provide that for them. Let me help you give them the life they deserve. The life you deserve. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah asked, her tone wary but curious. Marcus hadn't actually thought through the details, but ideas were forming rapidly in his mind. First, immediate needs. You need somewhere to live. The girls need clothes, school supplies, a stable environment. I have a property in Scottsdale, a guest house on my estate that's sitting empty. You and the girls could stay there while you recover and figure out your next steps. No rent. No obligations. That's too much, Sarah said immediately. Is it? Marcus challenged gently. Or is it just practical? You're going to be in this hospital for at least 2 days. When you're released, you'll need rest and recovery time. You can't work with cracked ribs. Where exactly were you planning to go? Back to the apartment you can't afford? To live in your car that's currently totaled at the bottom of an embankment? Sarah's eyes filled with frustrated tears. I had a plan. The job interview in Phoenix, it was for a nursing position at a private clinic. Better pay, better hours. I was going to make it work. And you still can, Marcus said. In fact, I know the director of that clinic, Dr. Raymond Phillips. We served on a medical technology board together. Let me make a call. I'm sure we can reschedule your interview once you've recovered. You'd do that? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I'd do more than that if you'd let me. Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. Sarah, I spent this entire morning questioning the purpose of my wealth. I walked away from my own company because I was tired of people who only cared about profit margins and stock prices. I was driving through the desert wondering if any of it mattered. And then I found your daughters and I remembered what actually matters. People. Connections. Helping someone when they need it most. Let me do this. Not for you to owe me, but because it's the right thing to do. Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Chen entered, followed by a woman in professional attire carrying a tablet. Ms. Mitchell, I hope I'm not interrupting, but we have some paperwork to complete. And there's the matter of your daughters. Hospital policy requires that children without supervision need to be placed with appropriate guardians. Sarah's face went pale. What does that mean? Are you trying to take my babies? No, Dr. Chen assured her quickly. But you're hospitalized and these children need somewhere to stay tonight. Do you have family in the area? Friends who could take them? I don't have anyone, Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. It's just us. It's always been just us. Marcus stood up. The girls can stay with me. I have plenty of space and my assistant Laura can help supervise. Ms. Mitchell and I are old friends, and I'm happy to care for her daughters while she recovers. The woman with the tablet, whom Marcus now recognized as a hospital social worker, looked skeptical. Mr. Thorne, while I appreciate your offer, we need to verify your background and suitability before— Run whatever checks you need, Marcus interrupted, handing her his business card. Call my lawyer. Call the Phoenix Police Department. I have zero criminal record and substantial resources to provide excellent care. These children have been through enough trauma today. Don't add to it by separating them from the one adult they currently trust. Mommy, we want to stay with Mr. Marcus, Rosie said, her small voice clear in the tense room. He's nice. He gave us pancakes and water and he promised to take care of us. We trust him. The social worker's expression softened. She looked at Sarah. Ms. Mitchell, are you comfortable with this arrangement? Sarah looked at her daughters, then at Marcus. He could see the internal struggle playing out on her face. She was a mother who'd always done everything herself, who'd never had help, who'd learned not to trust easily. But she was also practical enough to recognize that she had no other options, and that her children were clearly comfortable with this man who'd appeared like a guardian angel on a desert highway. Yes, Sarah finally said. I trust Marcus with my daughters. But girls, she addressed them firmly, you listen to Mr. Marcus and Ms. Laura. You behave. You remember your manners, and you remember that this is temporary just until Mommy gets better. Understood? 3 blonde heads nodded solemnly. We promise, Mommy, Lily said. We'll be so good you won't even recognize us. That drew a weak laugh from Sarah, followed by a wince of pain. The social worker made notes on her tablet, then nodded. I'll need to file a report, but given the circumstances and Mr. Thorne standing in the community, I'm comfortable with this temporary arrangement. However, Ms. Mitchell, we'll need to do a home visit once you're released to ensure you have adequate housing for your children. She'll have adequate housing, Marcus said firmly. I'll make sure of it. After the social worker and Dr. Chen left, Sarah gestured for Marcus to come closer. When he did, she took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone who'd been in a car accident hours earlier. Marcus, I need you to understand something. My daughters are everything to me. Everything. I joined the army to give them a better life. I became a medic because I wanted to help people and have a skill that could support my family. When I got out, I've worked myself to the bone trying to provide for them. If you're going to help us, truly help us, then I need to know you're committed. I need to know you won't just lose interest in a few days when the novelty wears off. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I don't do anything halfway, Sarah. When I commit to something, I see it through. Ask anyone who's ever worked with me. I'm stubborn, demanding, and I don't give up. If I say I'm going to help your family, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. Why though? Sarah pressed. You're a billionaire. You could be anywhere, doing anything. Why does this matter so much to you? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. This morning I walked away from my company, the thing I'd spent 20 years building. I quit because the people around me had turned it into something I didn't recognize anymore. They wanted to cut corners, to prioritize profits over people, to make decisions I couldn't live with. I drove into the desert thinking I'd made a terrible mistake, that I'd thrown away everything that mattered. He paused, looking at the 3 little girls who were listening intently despite their young age. And then I found your daughters standing in the middle of that road with X marks on their hands, and Then something clicked. This is what matters. Not stock prices or board meetings or profit margins. This helping people who need it. Being there when it counts. Your daughters reminded me why I started my company in the first place. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted my work to mean something. And today, for the first time in years, I feel like I actually did make a difference. Sarah's eyes were bright with tears. You saved our lives, Marcus, all four of us. Of course you made a difference. Then let me keep making a difference, Marcus said softly. Let me help you build the stable life you want for your girls. Not because you owe me, but because I can, and because it's the right thing to do. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded. Okay, but we do this as partners, not as charity case and benefactor. I'll accept your help, but I'm going to work for it. I'm going to contribute. Once I'm healed, once I have that job, I'm going to pay rent on that guest house. I'm going to be independent again. Deal? Marcus smiled and shook her hand carefully, mindful of her injuries. Deal. Now I should get these girls settled. It's been a very long day for them. He turned to the triplets. Say goodnight to your mom, and then we'll go to my house. Laura's already there preparing rooms for you. The goodbyes were tearful, but brief. Sarah was clearly exhausted, and the girls were practically asleep on their feet. Marcus scooped Chloe up in one arm and took Rosie's hand, while Lily walked beside him holding his other hand. They made quite a picture walking through the hospital, the tall billionaire in his dusty suit carrying exhausted children, like he'd been doing it his whole life. Laura was waiting at the entrance with the Range Rover. How'd it go? She asked quietly as Marcus settled the girls into the back seat. Better than expected, Marcus replied. Sarah Mitchell is remarkably strong and proud. This is going to be interesting. Interesting is one word for it, Laura said with a knowing smile. Marcus, do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into? These aren't stray puppies. They're human children with needs and trauma and complications. I know exactly what I'm getting into, Marcus said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Drive us home, Laura. These girls need beds and sleep. The drive to Scottsdale took 40 minutes, and all three girls were asleep before they left Phoenix proper. Marcus used the time to make more calls, arranging for his housekeeper Maria to prepare the guest house, for a pediatrician to come by in the morning to check the girls over, and for a shopping service to deliver clothes, toys, and essentials first thing in the morning. When they arrived at his estate, Marcus was struck by how different it looked through the eyes of children who'd spent their lives in poverty. The iron gates, the long driveway lined with saguaro cacti and desert landscaping, the massive main house with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern architecture, and beyond it, the charming guest house where Maria had already turned on every light, making it glow warmly in the desert night. Marcus carried Chloe while Laura helped Lily and Rosie stumble sleepily through the front door. Maria, his housekeeper who'd been with him for 15 years, waited inside with her usual efficient warmth. She'd made up 3 beds in the largest bedroom, set out pajamas that she'd somehow procured on impossibly short notice, and had warm milk and cookies waiting on the kitchen counter. Senor Marcus, Maria said softly in her accented English. These poor little angels, what they must have been through today. Don't you worry about nothing. Maria will take care of everything. And she did. Within 30 minutes, all 3 girls were bathed, dressed in soft pajamas, and tucked into bed. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching Maria sing a gentle Spanish lullaby, her weathered hands stroking their hair with grandmother-like tenderness. When she was done and the girls were sleeping peacefully, she joined Marcus in the hallway. That is a good thing you did today, Senor, Maria said. Bringing these babies here, helping their mama. God was watching, and he put you on that road for a reason. That's what I keep telling myself, Marcus admitted. Maria, I need you to help me tomorrow. These girls are going to wake up in a strange place, probably scared and confused. They'll need a familiar breakfast, comfort, stability. Can you handle that? Can I handle children? Maria laughed softly. Senor, I raised 7 of my own plus countless nieces and nephews. 3 little girls is nothing. You just tell me what they need, and Maria will make it happen. Marcus smiled. After Maria left, Marcus stood in the guest house living room, looking at the space with new eyes. He walked back to the main house, exhausted but too wired to sleep. In his home office, he opened his laptop and began making lists: school enrollment procedures, medical records, legal guardianship documents in case Sarah wanted him to have temporary authority while she recovered, child psychologists who specialized in trauma, everything these girls might need. It was nearly 2 in the morning when Laura knocked on his office door. She'd been staying in one of the guest rooms to help with the girls. "You should sleep," she said. "Tomorrow is going to be intense." "I know," Marcus replied, but he didn't close his laptop. "Laura, I need you to clear my schedule for the next week. Cancel everything. Tell the board I'm taking personal time. This is my priority now." Laura was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, this morning you quit the company. You walked out on a $20 billion empire, and tonight you're planning to take a week off to care for 3 children you just met. Are you having some kind of crisis?" "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "Or maybe I'm finally figuring out what actually matters. Those 3 little girls standing on that highway with X marks on their hands, Laura, they were there for a reason. I was there for a reason. Sarah Mitchell saved my life 7 years ago, and today I got to save hers and her daughter's lives. How is that not significant? How is that not exactly where I'm supposed to be?" Laura smiled, the kind of smile that said she'd been waiting for him to say something like this for years. "Then I'll clear your schedule. And Marcus, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. I've worked for you for 8 years, and I've never seen you this alive, this engaged. These children might just be the best thing that ever happened to you." After Laura left, Marcus finally closed his laptop. But instead of going to bed, he walked back to the guest house one more time. He checked on the girls who were sleeping soundly, their blonde hair spread across their pillows like halos. Lily had one arm draped protectively over Rosie. Chloe was curled up with one of the stuffed animals Laura had brought. Standing there in the doorway, watching these 3 innocent souls sleep peacefully after the worst day of their young lives, Marcus felt something shift fundamentally in his chest. For years, he'd measured his worth in dollars and deals and market share. He'd climbed to the top of his industry and found the view empty and cold. He'd accumulated wealth beyond measure and discovered it meant nothing when you had no one to share it with. But today he'd been given an unexpected gift: a second chance. A purpose that had nothing to do with profit margins and everything to do with being a decent human being. These 3 little girls and their brave, struggling mother had reminded him of who he used to be before success had hardened him. They'd reminded him that the best investment he could ever make was in people, not portfolios. "Thank you," Marcus whispered into the dark room, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the sleeping girls, to their mother, or to whatever force had brought them all together on that desert highway. "Thank you for saving me." The morning sun streamed through the windows of the guest house bedroom, waking 3 little girls who, for a confused moment, couldn't remember where they were. Then memory returned in a rush. The accident, the highway, Mr. Marcus, the hospital. Mommy was hurt but alive, and getting better. Lily sat up first, taking in their surroundings with wide eyes. The bedroom was bigger than their entire apartment in Flagstaff. The beds were soft and covered in clean white sheets that smelled like lavender. Through the window, she could see a swimming pool sparkling in the morning light, and beyond that, the main house that looked like something from a movie. "Are we in a palace?" Rosie whispered, rubbing her eyes. "I think we're in Mr. Marcus's house," Chloe said, climbing out of bed. She was wearing pajamas that were exactly her size, which seemed like magic since they hadn't had any pajamas with them. "Do you think Mommy is okay? Can we call her?" Before anyone could answer, there was a gentle knock on the door. "Buenos dias, little ones," came Maria's warm voice. "May I come in?" "Yes, ma'am," Lily called out, remembering her mother's lessons about politeness. Maria entered carrying a tray with orange juice and warm cinnamon rolls. "Good morning, angels. Did you sleep well? I thought you might be hungry. But if you want, we can have breakfast at the big table in the kitchen. I made pancakes and eggs and bacon and fruit, whatever you like." The girls looked at each other, communicating in that silent way that twins and triplets sometimes could. Then Lily spoke for all of them. "Can we call our mommy first? We need to know she's okay." "Of course, mi amor," Maria said, her eyes soft with understanding. "Senor Marcus, he is already awake and making calls. He promised he would find out about your mama first thing. Come, get dressed, and we will go see him. Maria had laid out new clothes for each girl, still in their signature colors but nicer than anything they'd ever owned. Pink, yellow, and purple outfits that fit perfectly and were soft and comfortable. As the girls dressed, Maria braided their hair, chatting gently about the house and the pool and the garden where hummingbirds came to visit every morning. They found Marcus in the kitchen of the main house, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt that made him look younger and less intimidating than he had in his suit yesterday. He was on his phone but immediately ended the call when he saw the girls. "Good morning," he said with a genuine smile. "I was just talking to the hospital. Your mom had a good night. She's awake and eating breakfast. The doctor says she's doing very well, and I told her you're all safe and settled here. She wants to talk to you." He held out his phone, and all three girls crowded around it as Marcus switched to video chat. Sarah's face appeared on the screen, and despite the bruising and the hospital gown, she looked so much better than she had yesterday. "Babies," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "How are you? Did you sleep okay? Are you behaving for Mr. Marcus?" "We're good, Mommy," Lily assured her. "We slept in big beds and a nice lady named Maria is here. She talks in Spanish and English and she's making us breakfast. And Mommy, the house is so big. There's a swimming pool." "Mr. Marcus says you're getting better," Chloe added. "When can you come home? We miss you." "I miss you too, baby, so much. The doctors say I'll be here for maybe 2 more days, and then I'll be able to come stay with you at Mr. Marcus's guest house while I finish recovering. Is that okay? Can you be brave for 2 more days?" "We can be brave forever if we need to," Rosie said solemnly. "We're your daughters. We're strong like you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, you are. You're the strongest, bravest, most wonderful daughters in the whole world. Now go eat breakfast and be good. I love you so much." After the call ended, the girls sat at the massive kitchen island while Maria served breakfast. Marcus watched them eat, noting how they were still a bit reserved, a bit overwhelmed by their surroundings. These were children who'd known scarcity and struggle. This abundance would take time to process. "Mr. Marcus?" Lily said between bites of pancake. "What are we going to do today?" Good question. Marcus hadn't exactly planned this out beyond the immediate crisis management. "Well, what would you girls like to do?" The 3 sisters exchanged glances. "We don't know," Chloe admitted. "We've never had a day where we could just do whatever we wanted." That statement hit Marcus harder than it should have. These were 6-year-old children, and they'd never had a day of just being kids. No wonder Sarah had been so desperate to get to that job interview. She'd been trying to give her daughters the childhood they deserved. "Then how about this?" Marcus said, an idea forming. "This morning we'll do something fun here. We could swim in the pool or play in the garden or watch movies. This afternoon I thought we could go shopping. You girls need more clothes and toys and books, things that are yours. And then tonight, we'll video chat with your mom again before bed. How does that sound?" "We can go shopping?" Rosie's eyes went wide. "Really shopping? In a real store?" "Really shopping," Marcus confirmed. "You can each pick out things you like, within reason," he added, thinking of setting some boundaries. "We're getting practical things you need, not filling a warehouse. But yes, you should have belongings that make you happy." "Mommy's going to say we can't accept all this," Lily said quietly. She was the pragmatic one Marcus was learning. "She's going to say it's too much." "Your mom and I talked about this," Marcus said gently. "She understands that you girls need things, and right now she can't provide them because she's hurt. She's allowing me to help. That's not charity, that's friendship. That's people caring about each other." After breakfast, the girls tentatively explored their new temporary home. The swimming pool was the biggest hit. Maria had found swimsuits that fit them perfectly, and soon all 3 were splashing in the shallow end while Marcus and Laura watched from the patio, ready to jump in if needed, though all 3 girls could swim reasonably well. "They're good kids," Laura observed. "Polite, resilient. Sarah raised them well despite the circumstances." "She did," Marcus agreed. "Laura, I want you to do something for me. Research the best private schools in the area, places with strong academic programs, but also support systems for kids who've experienced trauma or instability. These girls are bright, Lily especially. They deserve educational opportunities that will nurture their potential. You're really going all in on this, Laura said, but it wasn't a criticism. The board is going to lose their minds when they find out. Let them, Marcus said firmly. I walked away from that company, remember? They can't control what I do with my time or my money anymore. That afternoon, Marcus took the girls to an upscale children's store in Scottsdale. He'd called ahead and the manager had cleared out a section for privacy. The girls walked through the store with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the choices. Everything was so different from the thrift store bins they were used to digging through with their mother. Can we really pick anything? Chloe asked, holding up a dress with sparkles on it. Within reason, yes, Marcus confirmed. You need everyday clothes for playing and being comfortable. But if you see something special you really love, we can get that too. What struck Marcus was how modest their choices were. Even with permission to pick freely, each girl selected practical items: jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. It was only when Laura encouraged them to pick out some fun clothes that they tentatively chose dresses and hair accessories, and one coveted item each. Lily wanted art supplies. Chloe wanted a stuffed unicorn almost as big as she was. Rosie wanted a telescope because she loved stars. At the checkout, the total came to several $1,000s, but Marcus didn't even blink. What broke his heart was watching Lily carefully count items to make sure they weren't getting too much, and asking if they could put some things back if it was too expensive. 6 years old and already carrying the weight of financial worry. Lily, Marcus said, kneeling down to her level. Your job is to be a kid, not to worry about money. That's my job right now. Your only job is to be 6 years old and let yourself be happy. Can you do that? Lily's eyes filled with tears. It's hard. I'm used to taking care of Chloe and Rosie. I'm used to making sure we don't ask Mommy for things because I know she can't afford them. I know, sweetheart. And that shows what a good sister and daughter you are. But right now, with me, you don't have to do that. Let me be the grown-up. Let me worry about the adult stuff. You just be a little girl. Deal? Lily nodded and unexpectedly wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck in a tight hug. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. You're the nicest person we've ever met except for Mommy. When they returned to the estate, the girls were exhausted but happy. They showed Maria all their new things, chattering excitedly. Marcus retreated to his office to handle some calls that couldn't wait, but he found himself distracted, checking on the girls through the window, smiling when he heard their laughter echoing through the house. His phone rang. The hospital. Dr. Chen. Mr. Thorne, I wanted to update you on Ms. Mitchell's condition. She's progressing very well. We're going to release her tomorrow morning instead of keeping her the full 48 hours. She's eager to be with her daughters, and I see no medical reason to keep her here longer. Will you be able to pick her up? Absolutely, Marcus said. What time? 10 a.m. would work well. And Mr. Thorne? I don't know what your relationship is with this family, but what you're doing for them is remarkable. In 30 years of medicine, I've seen a lot of families torn apart by crisis. It's rare to see someone step in the way you have. After the call ended, Marcus made one more important phone call. To Dr. Raymond Phillips, director of the private medical clinic where Sarah had been supposed to interview. Raymond, it's Marcus Thorne. I need a favor. 20 minutes later, Marcus had secured not just a rescheduled interview for Sarah, but a guaranteed position if she wanted it. The pay was excellent, the hours were reasonable, and the health insurance was comprehensive. Raymond owed Marcus from a business deal years ago and was happy to help. More importantly, he was genuinely impressed when Marcus sent him Sarah's credentials. She's overqualified for the position, Raymond had said. With her background as a combat medic, she could easily be a trauma nurse. But I'm happy to have her in any capacity. That evening, during their video call with Sarah, Marcus shared the news. The job at Dr. Phillips's clinic is yours if you want it, he told her. You don't even have to interview, though he'd like to meet you formally once you're healed. The position starts whenever you're ready. Sarah stared at him through the phone screen. How did you? Marcus, that's too much. You can't just hand me a job. I didn't hand you anything, Marcus corrected. Dr. Phillips reviewed your credentials and was impressed. Your military medical experience, your trauma training, your excellent service record. You earned this position. I just made the introduction. The rest is all you. But, Mommy, Lily interrupted. Why do you always say no when people try to help? Mr. Marcus is being nice. Just say thank you. And from the mouths of babes indeed. Sarah laughed, then winced from her ribs. You're right, baby, I'm sorry. Marcus, thank you. Truly. This is more than I could have hoped for. You're welcome. And Sarah? The girls had a good day today. We went shopping, they swam in the pool, and they've been asking me about a million questions about everything. They're remarkable children. They are, Sarah agreed softly. They're my whole world. And you're giving us a chance to have the life I've always wanted for them. I don't know how to repay that. Just get better, Marcus said. That's all the repayment I need. The girls miss you terribly. Come home tomorrow so they can stop worrying. That night, after the girls were in bed, Marcus sat on the patio of the main house looking up at the Arizona stars. It had been less than 48 hours since he'd driven away from his company headquarters, angry and disillusioned. Less than 48 hours since he'd been questioning everything he'd built and achieved. And in that impossibly short time, his entire life had shifted course. 3 little girls with X marks on their hands had literally stood in his path and changed everything. He'd quit a billion-dollar company that morning, thinking he was losing everything that mattered. Instead, he'd found something that mattered more than he could have imagined. Purpose, connection, family. His phone buzzed with an email from the board of Thorne Industries. They were demanding he reconsider his resignation. They were offering him more money, more control, more everything. Marcus deleted the email without finishing it. That part of his life was over. Whatever came next, it started here, with these 4 people who'd stumbled into his life at exactly the right moment. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Phoenix Children's Hospital precisely at 10 a.m. to pick up Sarah. The girls had wanted to come, but he'd convinced them to stay with Maria, promising that their mother would be home in just a few hours. When he entered Sarah's room, she was already dressed in new clothes that Laura had thoughtfully purchased, since her own had been damaged in the accident. Ready to go home? Marcus asked. Home, Sarah repeated softly. It's been so long since I've had a place that felt like home. Not just shelter, but actual home. The guest house will be your home for as long as you need it, Marcus said. No pressure, no timeline. You focus on healing and starting your new job. The girls need stability, and I can provide that. As Marcus drove them back to Scottsdale, Sarah was quiet, staring out the window at the Arizona landscape. Finally, she spoke. Marcus, I need to know your expectations. You're doing all this for us, giving us a place to live, helping me get a job, taking care of my daughters. What do you want in return? Marcus was surprised by the directness of the question. Nothing. I want nothing in return. Everyone wants something, Sarah said, and he heard the weariness of someone who'd learned to be suspicious of generosity. Okay, you're right, Marcus conceded. I want something. I want to see your daughters thrive. I want to see them go to good schools and have opportunities and not worry about where their next meal is coming from. I want to see you build the stable life you've been fighting for. And selfishly, I want to be part of that. Not as a benefactor or a charity case handler, but as someone who cares. As family. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Why does this matter so much to you? Be honest. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, choosing his words carefully. Because 7 years ago I was bleeding out on foreign soil, and you saved my life. Because yesterday morning I quit my company and drove into the desert thinking my life had no meaning beyond the dollars in my bank account. Because your daughters stood in the middle of the road with X marks on their hands and reminded me what actually matters. Because I'm 42 years old, I've built an empire, and I've never felt as alive as I did carrying your sleeping children into my house and knowing they were safe. Is that honest enough? Sarah wiped at her eyes. You're lonely. That's what this is really about. You're a billionaire with everything money can buy, but you don't have people. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Or maybe I just recognize something important when I literally almost run into it on a highway. Your family needed help. I can provide that help. Why does it have to be more complicated than that? When they arrived at the estate, The girls erupted from the guest house the moment they saw the Range Rover pull up. They ran to their mother, and Sarah carefully knelt down to hug all three at once, tears streaming down her face despite the pain from her ribs. "Mommy's home," she whispered, kissing each of their heads. "Mommy's home, and we're all safe, and everything is going to be okay." Marcus watched from a respectful distance, giving the family their moment. But then Rosie looked up and waved at him. "Mr. Marcus, come see. Maria made special cookies for when Mommy came home." And just like that, he was pulled into their circle, no longer an outsider, but part of their celebration. In the weeks that followed, a routine developed. Sarah healed steadily, her ribs moving, her strength returning. She started her position at Dr. Phillips' clinic, finding that she loved the work and was excellent at it. The girls enrolled in a prestigious private school, where they quickly proved to be exceptional students, particularly Lily, whose artistic talents and academic abilities caught everyone's attention. The guest house became truly their home. Sarah decorated it with things that made it feel personal, and the girls' laughter filled the space constantly. Marcus found himself spending more time there than in his own main house. Dinners together became routine. He helped with homework, taught the girls to play chess, and listened to their endless stories about school and friends and all the normal things children should be excited about. But something unexpected was developing between Marcus and Sarah. It started as friendship, two people who'd saved each other's lives, bonded by shared experience. But slowly, quietly, it became something more. Glances that lasted a bit too long. Accidental touches that neither pulled away from too quickly. Conversations that stretched late into the night after the girls were asleep. It was Lily who finally said something about it. 3 months after the accident, she approached Marcus while he was reading in the main house. "Mr. Marcus, do you love our mommy?" Marcus looked up, startled. "What makes you ask that?" "Because you look at her the way Daddy used to look at her in the old pictures," Lily said simply. "Before he died when we were babies. You look at Mommy like she's the most important person in the world." Marcus set down his book. "Your mom is very important to me, yes. She saved my life once, and she's become one of my closest friends. But Lily, I would never do anything to make you or your sisters uncomfortable. You three come first. Always." "We know that," Lily said, climbing onto the couch next to him. "That's why it would be okay if you loved Mommy. Because we know you love us too. And we love you, Mr. Marcus. You saved us, you gave us a home, you made Mommy happy again. That makes you family." That evening, after the girls were in bed, Marcus found Sarah on the patio of the guest house, looking up at the stars. "Can I join you?" "Always," Sarah said, and Marcus's heart did something complicated in his chest at that single word. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Sarah spoke. "Lily told me about your conversation today, about love. She's remarkably perceptive for a 6-year-old, Marcus said carefully. "She gets that from me," Sarah said with a slight smile. Then her expression grew serious. "Marcus, I need to be honest with you. When you found us on that highway, I was at the lowest point of my life. I was exhausted, broke, desperate, and you appeared like some kind of miracle. You saved us, gave us everything we needed, asked for nothing in return. It would be easy to fall in love with you just because of that. But that wouldn't be fair to either of us." Marcus's chest tightened. "I understand." "Let me finish," Sarah said gently. "What I'm trying to say is that over these past 3 months, I've gotten to know you. Not Marcus Thorne, the billionaire, but Marcus, the man who plays chess with my daughters and makes terrible pancakes on Saturday mornings and falls asleep on the couch during movie nights. The man who left his company because his principles mattered more than profit. The man who drives my girls to school and knows all their friends' names and attends every school event like he's their father." She turned to face him fully. "I'm not falling in love with you because you saved us, Marcus. I'm falling in love with you because of who you are, and that terrifies me." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "It terrifies me too. I've never had this before. I've never had someone look at me and see past the money and the success to just see me. I've never had children in my life, and suddenly I can't imagine my life without your daughters in it. I've never had a family, and now I do. And the thought of losing it keeps me up at night." "You're not going to lose us," Sarah said softly. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home now. You're our family. And if we're going to do this, if we're really going to see where this goes between us, then we do it right. Slowly. Carefully. Making sure the girls are okay with everything." "Agreed," Marcus said. "The girls come first. Always." Sarah smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "They already love you, you know. Lily told me yesterday that she wishes you were their real dad. All three of them feel that way." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I would be honored to be their dad, in whatever capacity they need me to be." They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand looking up at the Arizona stars. And Marcus thought about how drastically life could change in a single day. How three little girls with X marks on their hands could stand in the middle of a road and redirect the entire course of your life. How the woman you saved could turn out to be the woman who saved you right back. The weeks turned into months, and the months turned into a year. Sarah's position at the clinic became permanent, and she flourished there, eventually being promoted to head nurse. The girls thrived in school, with Lily winning art competitions, Chloe excelling in math, and Rosie becoming the school's youngest chess champion after Marcus taught her the game. The guest house remained their home, but the boundaries between it and the main house blurred until they were really just one household with two buildings. Marcus and Sarah's relationship developed slowly and naturally, with the girls' blessing and participation. They were a family in all but legal terms, and even that changed one spring evening when Marcus took all four of them to their favorite spot overlooking Camelback Mountain. "I've been thinking," Marcus said as the sun set in spectacular colors over the desert, "about how sometimes the universe puts you in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. About how an X mark on three little hands can change everything. About how the person you save can turn out to be the person who saves you back." He pulled out a small box and got down on one knee. Three smaller boxes appeared from his pocket for the girls. "Sarah Mitchell, would you marry me? And Lily, Chloe, Rosie, would you let me be your dad officially? Not just someone who loves you, but your real family?" The boxes for the girls contained delicate necklaces, each with a charm in their signature color. The box for Sarah contained a ring that sparkled in the fading light. Four voices said yes through happy tears. The wedding was small and beautiful, held in the garden of the estate with just their closest friends and family. Laura was the maid of honor. Maria cried through the entire ceremony. The girls served as flower girls, walking down the aisle in their pink, yellow, and purple dresses, their necklaces from Marcus catching the light. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Lily spoke up. "I don't object, but I want to say something." She looked at Marcus with those serious, intelligent eyes. "A year ago, me and my sister stood in the middle of a road with X marks on our hands. We were scared and alone, and we didn't know if anyone would ever stop to help us. But you did. You stopped. And you didn't just help us that day. You changed our whole lives. You gave us a home and a family and a future. You made our mommy smile again. You became our dad, so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for being our miracle." There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Marcus stepped down from the altar and hugged all three girls. "Thank you for standing in that road," he whispered. "Thank you for having the courage to ask for help. Thank you for letting me be part of your amazing family." As Marcus and Sarah exchanged vows, as they promised to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives, the sun set completely over the Arizona desert. And in that moment, Marcus understood that he'd been wrong that morning a year ago, when he'd driven away from his company thinking he'd lost everything. He hadn't lost anything. He'd been freed to find what truly mattered. Success wasn't measured in dollars or deals. It was measured in three little girls who called him dad, in a wife who saw him for who he really was, in a family that had been broken and lost but was now whole and found, in the knowledge that sometimes the universe conspires to bring the right people together at exactly the right moment. Years later, when people asked Marcus about the best decision he'd ever made, he never talked about his business achievements or his financial success. He talked about three little girls with X marks on their hands, standing in the middle of a desert highway, waving for help. He talked about the moment he decided to stop, to stay, to care. He talked about how sometimes you save someone, and in doing so, they save you right back. The X marks had faded from their hands within days of that terrible, wonderful day. But the mark they'd made on his heart, on his life, on his very soul, that would last forever. Because they'd marked the spot where everything changed, where a lonely billionaire found a family, where a struggling mother found security, where 3 brave little girls found the father they'd always deserved. They marked the spot where 4 broken pieces came together to make something whole and beautiful and perfect. They marked the spot where a road to nowhere became a road to redemption, to love, to home.